Order. Craig Williams to move the motion.
Thank you indeed, Mr Brennan. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this afternoon. And I am delighted to rise today in this Westminster Hall debate to highlight a key issue for the Welsh capital, and that's the enhancement of Cardiff Central Station. And I'm delighted to see the honourable members for Cardiff South and Penarth, of course, where half of the station resides, and the honourable member for Cardiff West here, and look forward to your contributions. And anyone who's been to Cardiff by train will have marvelled at the wonderful listed station building, showing the significance of the railway hub. Trains from the valleys converge, providing easy access for passengers to the mainland trains, heading for Swansea, Newport, Bristol, Swindon, Reading, and, of course, London, Paddington. No doubt the 13 million plus passengers which use this station appreciate how its design and structure emphasise the importance of Cardiff as an economic centre as well as a key tourist destination. Put simply, Cardiff Central Station is the gateway to our capital city, the gateway to Wales, our nation, and the significance cannot be underestimated for our capital city. However, Cardiff Central needs to move with the times. The bus station opposite was demolished to be replaced by a new BBC flagship development and new top-quality offices, and I do welcome that development. I just wish the cart wasn't put before the horse, and perhaps we'd have had a bus station being built at the same time, if not before, the BBC development. But the new transport interchange hub, which we will see, and the new bus station relocated at the edge of Central Square, not since St David's II has Cardiff seen the scale of redevelopment. And if you're a business or you want to catch a bus or you're there to get the train, Cardiff Central Square is going to be incredibly impressive, and its success needs to be reflected in our Cardiff Central Station. Network Rail, in their March 2016 Welsh route study, forecast the number of passenger journeys through Cardiff Central to be upwards of 23 million by 2023, Mr Bone, and 32 million by 2043. And I know the Minister will be aware of these growth projections and what that means for a Cardiff Central Station that is at capacity now, will be at capacity tomorrow, and will certainly be at capacity by 2045 if those growth projections are true. The Welsh capital is a key tourist destination for the United Kingdom, and Cardiff is a place people want to come, and more so with the UK government both in the city and across the world, with our Prime Minister in India now selling Cardiff as a place to visit and to do business. We need our Cardiff Central Station to reflect those ambitions. Many of those at today's debate will know the delights of Cardiff Castle, Cardiff Bay, and the destination shopping offered by both St David's and St David's too. Cardiff has hosted many memorable sporting events, Mr Bone, and I've mentioned them both in the House and in previous Westminster debates, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be shy mentioning them again. And if we think of the FA Cup finals, the Ashes cricket, Speedway, to name just a few, and the excitement about the UEFA Champions League final coming at June. But Cardiff Central Station, like I've said, is at capacity today, Mr Bone, and it will be at capacity tomorrow, and something needs to be done. On these, I would happily give way to the honourable member.
I thank him for giving way, and it's an important debate that he's secured. And I would agree with what he said about the pressures. Cardiff and Vale College, new businesses being built on my side of the station in my constituency, also putting pressures there. And would he join with me in congratulating the Cardiff Labour Council, who have been raising this issue with Network Rail and with the Treasury and with DFT for some time now, and share my concern that we haven't had clarity on the important funding that's needed for the GRIP studies, which would enable us to go forward with the investments needed to expand the station.
Craig Williams.
I will touch shortly on the GRIP 2, which is that we're at, and the GRIP 1, which, of course, there was a significant private sector contribution towards that, and Network Rail. We're at the stage where GRIP 2 now, and I want to work with everyone. I will work with the Welsh Labour Council. I was a member for 8 years, not of the Welsh Labour Council, but of Cardiff Council. And, of course, I want to work with the Labour Welsh Government. But I do remind the honourable member that the UK Government has been given significant powers, significant monies in the form of the 1.2 billion infrastructure, in terms of the city deal. The money that I will allude to is not great in terms of transforming that station now in phase 1, as well as, of course, looking at bigger ventures. So while I do welcome any lobbying that agree with, if me and the honourable member are agreeing in something, we're bound to be right. But I do welcome us all working together. But, they do have significant powers and monies to attach. So on match days, Mr Bone, of course I'll give way.
Brennan.
allow him to make his progress then thereafter. And I completely agree with him. It's really, as a former member of the City Council myself, it's very important that all parties should work together positively to achieve this for our wonderful city. Of course, he did mention the City deal. That was specifically, as he knows, the redevelopment of Cardiff Central Station was specifically excluded from the City deal by the government. So does he agree that now it's really, really important that progress is made? I think that's what he's calling for today. And I do welcome, I know he's a PPS in the Treasury, and as a former whip in the Treasury myself, I do hope that this debate today is informed perhaps by a little nod and a wink from his boss that we might be making some progress in the autumn statement. Perhaps he can tell the House whether that's true.
Mr. Bone, he's trying to get me in terrible trouble. I will, of course, skirt that happily. But what I will say is I did mention the huge infrastructure fund as well as the City deal, as well as the Welsh Government having access to borrowing powers now. This is not always a case of looking up the M4 and waiting for important investment from the UK government. This is about working together, quite rightfully, cross-party, and also with the private sector. And I'll touch on the developments and how transforming that central square also enables us to access monies that don't always have to be the public sector stepping in. But, I was on match days, Mr. Bone, and with the autumn internationals at fast pace, sadly, with the latest Wales game, but I'm sure we're onwards and upwards. I wanted to touch on the situation and the struggle that we have at Cardiff Central Station. This was evident during the 2015 Rugby World Cup, where we hosted over 500,000 fans to the 8 matches at the then Millennium Stadium, the now Principality Stadium, in addition to the 160,000 watching in the Cardiff Arms Park fan zone. And considering that only a quarter of those tickets were sold to Welsh postcodes, you can see the stress on the system. And in terms of the operators, I do feel for Great Western Railways because, of course, only 3 of the platforms at Cardiff Central can accommodate trains heading to England. And this is why there were obvious problems then for that level of capacity. And also, if you look at one of those 3 platforms, Platform 0 is too short to accommodate the long train services to the east, adding a further constraint. The geography of Cardiff city centre, while in my opinion world-leading and brilliant for any sports fan or tourist, you walk out of a world-class station, certainly in the 20th century, not quite for the 21st, and that's why we're here, but you walk out of that station, you have the Principality Stadium, the finest rugby stadium in the world, then you have the Swailic and Ashes Test cricket, and you also have football, athletics, and many other stadiums in the city centre. So it's a great experience, but it does add pressure on a station already struggling. The Rugby World Cup transport planning, and I do want to refer to the former Business and Enterprise Committee in the National Assembly. They produced a very good report picking up many of these issues, and they also reiterated the need for substantial investment in the station to meet the expectation of today's traveller. The agencies involved in the event did learn lessons and made substantial changes for the few final Rugby World Cup games, but it also highlighted some of the issues with the current arrangements, which I want to dig out. So compared with many newer redevelopment stations, the platforms are narrow and people cram to the edge waiting for their trains. This is not what we expect of a modern station. Leading from platforms are staircases, which no longer fit for purpose at peak times. The subsequent subway forces nearly all travellers into a confined area below the platforms before spilling out into extremely cramped ticket areas. And I can see my honourable members nodding from our own experience up and down that railway. The experience is very similar to a crammed London Underground station. If you factor in Cardiff's projected increase in passenger demand, which I touched on, it is clearly this station, although magnificent, was a station that was fit for the 20th century and not fit for the 21st. Waiting outside in the car park to go up old staircases onto narrow platforms is not what a modern rail network wants. It's not what passengers expect. And according to satisfaction surveys, there is a real risk that if this is not addressed, the future events may decide to go elsewhere. A busy station which cannot accommodate its current passengers is a disincentive for organisers to bring prestigious events to our Welsh capital city, which is our bread and butter, Mr. Bone, of not just our local but national economy, and something as a Welshman as well as a Welsh MP I'm incredibly proud of. I question if Cardiff would be successful, for example, the Champions League final in 10 years' time, if no enhancements were made. And while I regret deeply the fact we are not bidding for the Commonwealth Games in 2026, I also stress that if we aren't investing in Cardiff Central Station, that will have been one of the key, looking at how public transport's organised in and around that region, would have been scrutinised as part of that bid. Any redevelopment must respect the existing structure, and it is good to see the initial artists' proposals from Network Rail do just that, building existing frontage, protecting its listing. The frontage is far more than brick and mortar, and let me reiterate that for decades it's been the first part that Cardiff see. Investors come out and they say that Great Western Railway. It's something to protect and cherish. And I do pay tribute to Wales Online, who helped in the run-up to this debate invite businesses and constituents, and it was very clear from the reaction I had in my inbox and on my Facebook group that they want that heritage protected. They don't just want a brand new 21st century station that with all its modern attributes. They want our heritage protected as well. But that does come with a price. The graphics suggest new access above the platform, an increase in retail space, a canopy across to the hopeful new bus station, which we are shortly, I hope, to hear a lot more about. There are much needed and overdue improvements to address this traveller's experience. And additionally, a number of constituents have been in touch, suggestions of improvements around Cardiff Central, including the interlink with the bus interchange and some kind of canopy, but also south of the station with the redevelopment of the Brains site, potential drop-off points, and I'm incredibly interested to be watching what's happening in my honourable member's constituency, but of course so important to my constituents from the northern side of the city. So that the better drop-off side there, and there are also suggestions that the redevelopment, like I said, must respect the heritage, but we don't want one of those plastic shopping malls that you've seen increased in so many major developments now. Something that protects the arcades of our city and a nod to our heritage. But again, this all comes with a price tag. But let's now focus on the pressing issue behind this redevelopment of Cardiff Central, and that's funding, as been alluded to by the honourable members for West and South and Penarth. The government is investing in our railways, particularly on the London-Wales route, and I would very much welcome a comment from the Minister on this morning's announcement about the electrification and how that's affecting progress up the line to Cardiff. But the Great Western Main Line is being electrified, reducing the journey time from Cardiff Central to Paddington, and I do welcome that. And talking to our terrific team in Network Rail in Wales, this is the largest investment since the Victorian times. It's hugely complicated, it's hugely expensive, but it's hugely welcome. And talking yesterday, in fact, to our team in Wales, operating the Wales and the board of the network, I know they've got the ambition, I know they've got that plan to deliver, and I know they are getting more commercially minded in terms of alternative funding methods for some of the projects I'm talking about now. So I do pay tribute to them. But we've seen the money that's been spent in Reading, widening platforms and increasing capacity. And it's clearly that as you increase capacity up the railway, you're going to add pressure to where we haven't. So that, I think. And also Newport, which of course was wisely invested in 2010 for the Ryder Cup. Now, if we can redevelop, and I don't for a second bash Newport for doing this, but this is the third busiest station in Wales, and it's been redeveloped. Let's look at the busiest railway station in Wales, and of course that is unabashedly Cardiff Central. Without funding from DfT, the Welsh Government, and a contribution from Cardiff Council, this scheme could falter. Network Rail advises they have done much as possible within the existing funds. They've completed their initial vision, Mr. Bone, but they now need and something in the anticipated cost of 45 million to move forward with GRIP 2 and the affordability study. Network Rail can then put forward their business case. To my mind, it will be easily made because of the growth projections and because of the capacity bottleheads. But we all agree that Cardiff Central needs enhancing. But there, of course, is the concern where the money comes from. I do not pretend, as my honourable member alluded in both of our experience in Treasury, that it is unlimited. And I do get the concerns that DfT has about investing everywhere in the UK all at once. But I think this does represent value for money, but it needs funding solutions. Network Rail are keen to work with partners, with current developers around Cardiff Central Station, with the BBC flagship building going up, with the new office blocks going up, with a big government building happening somewhere in the Cardiff city centre. They need to liaise, and you also got the South Wales Metro that's going to happen mainly on the back of the Cardiff City deal, but the Welsh Government there, and if they chose light rail or heavy rail, or when they let us know what they want, that's also going to free some contribution to the network, so it becomes a fully functioning transport interchange hub. And the crucial issues for the station's enhancement is, of course, timescale, especially as Cardiff Central Square redevelopment is underway right now at a pace. Designs have been published, but they must be completed before Network Rail's control period 6 starts in 2019 if we are to get there in a timely fashion. Only this can then deliver a Cardiff Central Station redevelopment quickly and hopefully be completed before the end of CP6, in my opinion. The station can also match some of its competitors in other ways, mainly, and I do want to dwell on this. I know the franchise for River Trains Wales, which of course is being transferred to the Welsh Government now, is coming up in 2018, but there is a massive potential there because Cardiff Central Station is currently organised and run by River Trains Wales, and I'm not going to bash them, but what I am going to say is most major stations are run by Network Rail, and it is in time, in my opinion, and I get the Minister will have to be careful given the cross-devolution issues here, but Network Rail needs control on that station, and then they can be innovative and work with private sector partners. So Cardiff is going to grow and grow, and its residents want to travel using Cardiff Central Station. Network Rail told me that a Reading-style station at Cardiff Central, of course, with a Welsh nod to our heritage, but GWR cite examples such as Edinburgh's Haymarket Station, which was rebuilt in 2013, and again, to dwell on Arriva Trains Wales, customer satisfaction is heavily affected by Cardiff Central and its capacity issues. So whatever new station you base it on, Cardiff Central desperate needs enhancing. And Minister, while I'm delighted to talk to that major vision, I do want to conclude, Mr Bone, on perhaps something in the shorter term and a phased approach. And that's having spoken more broadly about it and that big vision that we all support to get there by the time that we get those huge growth projections. But speaking to interested parties and developers in the run-up to this debate, it has become clear, Minister, that there is an easy, deliverable, quick solution. In fact, a leading developer and other stakeholders do have these plans for an early delivery phase to coincide then with larger phases going forward, which would obviously take time, as I've alluded to, and money to get into a control period in the future. So in closing this, I want to dwell on that for a moment. And that's a quick phase, Mr Bone, where you would see the in-house and Brennan, all his force of actually the station as it's currently constituted goes under the platforms quite well. It's currently W.H. Smith's, but there's a way of reconfiguring that station, in my opinion and in experts' opinion, where you could reverse the staircases, where you could open it up. And I'm led to believe, although I am not an expert, that the 4 to 5 million that you were talking for a GRIP study could be not redeployed, because we need that money for that GRIP study, but you're talking that kind of sum to transform in an early phase the walking out into Cardiff Central Station. So I would implore on you, Minister, in handing over to enlighten us about your plans and your vision for our great station, to come down to Cardiff, to have a round table, somebody in your department, with Network Rail, with stakeholders, with the 4 members of Parliament of our great city, and to talk to developers and see what can be done in the short term with the Welsh Government and the Council to make sure that we tackle this capacity problem now, Minister, but we also look to the longer term for the 2030s, 2040s. So, Mr Bone, with that, I do conclude and hope we can phase Cardiff Central enhancements.
The question is that this House has considered enhancing Cardiff Central Station. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Bone, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship for the first time, and indeed the first time to speak as a minister in Westminster Hall. I find it hard to believe it has taken until now to bring rail to this chamber, but here we are, so I shall do my best. I congratulate my honourable friendly member for Cardiff North on securing this debate. I think he set out a compelling vision of his ideas for Wales' capital city, Cardiff, and the future role it can play, and the role that the station will play in that city's development. I fully appreciate the importance of Cardiff and the station to Wales' visions. The UK Government has already shown its commitment to the station by funding an additional platform and capacity at the station in recent years. Network Rail is investing over £300 million for the Cardiff Area Signalling Renewal Project, The majority of this investment is focused in and around the Cardiff Central Station area and between the Queen Street and the Canton Depot. We've also provided additional enhancement funding of £27 million to support capacity, including the development of a new platform at Cardiff Central, which will be brought into use this Christmas. I noted his comments regarding lessons learned from the Rugby World Cup. I too looked at the Business and Enterprise Committee's report that was published by the Welsh Assembly and noticed the problems there were with the first 3 matches and the ensuing queuing that then occurred. I gather that lessons were learned promptly and urgently, and improvements were made for subsequent games. A larger gate line, for example, has been installed to enable improved passenger flows, along with a new ticket office and passenger waiting room on Platform 8, partly by moving the old crew accommodation out of the station into a new modular building off Platform 8. This new Platform 8, as I said, will be commissioned over the Christmas-New Year period shortly coming up. So I hope that that makes a positive improvement. We recognise that there will be a significant uplift in passenger capacity, but demand will still increase, as he pointed out, up until 2043. We're currently undergoing testing and validation with colleagues from Network Rail as to what the pace of that growth will be, when it will occur, and what the demands placed upon Network Rail, on Cardiff Central Station will be. So we hope to provide better and more reliable journeys into and out of the station, allow it to accommodate that forecast growth for some time to come in the future. In addition, if I'll have to give way, yes?
I thank the Minister for giving way, and what he said about growth, absolutely. But it's not obviously just the growth in the city centre that's crucial to this project. I've long argued for the reopening of stations throughout the east of the city in places like Rumney and Splott and St Mellons, and obviously expanding the capacity at Cardiff Central is crucial to that. Will he look at those issues with Network Rail as a part of a wider strategy for enhancing transport in that area?
Minister.
I very much welcome what he has to say. He'll be more than aware of the plans that are currently ongoing to improve the service on the Valley Metro lines, to increase the devolution to the Welsh Government over how it configures plans for the future. We're currently waiting for the initial industry advice as to what the priorities are for both the Welsh Government and Network Rail in the Wales area. Once we have that initial industry advice, what the key asks are with regard to Wales, we can then start to work out what our priorities are for Control Period 6. But he has made his point, and I'm sure my officials have heard it, as will Network Rail, so we will be in touch, as it were. But as my honourable friend mentioned, we are investing heavily in new trains across the network, in particular replacing the ageing high-speed trains on the Great Western and South Wales Main Line with a new fleet of bi-mode intercity express trains. This will offer more seats, up to 40% more capacity during peak time into Paddington, reducing journey times by around 15 minutes for South Wales to London as electrification progresses. Bi-mode trains are capable of meeting the existing line speeds in South Wales, but will also provide more leg space and more luggage to enable a better ride for passengers. And this will enable us to markedly increase capacity to meet forecast growth on this intercity route, with improved service reliability and reduced environmental impact. And the electrification of the Great Western Main Line brings direct benefits, in my view, to Wales, as well as our provision of £125 million towards the cost of the Volley Line's electrification. I'll happily give way, yes?
I'm very grateful for the Minister giving way. And can he confirm to the House today that his written statement today, I've had a look at it and it doesn't seem to have any impact, would have no impact whatsoever or cause any delay to that electrification that he's just mentioned?
I did note his great efforts to try and find it on the mobile phone, and I congratulate him on doing so adroitly. I'm happy to confirm that my focus is on making sure that we deliver electrification to Cardiff on time and making sure that passengers in South Wales benefit from that electrification to the fullest degree possible. And we're also investing in such schemes as the Western Rail Link to Heathrow that will also benefit passengers in Wales. And these improvements should all make South Wales a more attractive place for businesses to locate and for tourism to thrive. However, we do know that Cardiff Central is the busiest station in Wales. This is borne out in the recently published Network Rail Welsh Route study, which forecasts the number of passengers using Cardiff Central Station could grow from 13 million in 2013 to as much as 32 million by 2043. Meeting such growth will bring further challenges. This is why the rail industry introduces introduced a long-term planning process designed to plan the long-term capability of the network up to 30 years in the future. The Welsh Route Study looked at demand and capability for the period up until 2043, but with particular emphasis on the next rail funding period from 2019. It made clear that by 2024, passengers at Cardiff Central will experience higher levels of congestion around the platform, subway and stairs at peak times, and that queues could form when trains are delayed. It identified a case for further platform and capacity improvements at Cardiff Central Station and concluded that the need for wider regeneration in the city supports the redevelopment at Cardiff Central Station as a, and I quote, choice for funders, unquote, in the next funding period from 2019. So we will be looking very closely at that initial industry advice when it comes shortly. The rail industry will be presenting that advice to help us understand how to meet forecast demand, and it will of course include options that affect Wales. We continue to engage with the Welsh Government to understand its priorities for the future, and Network Rail has started to identify schemes it thinks should be considered for development. I'm pleased to note that Network Rail is working closely with Cardiff Council and developers to align its plans with the already committed investment plans for the enterprise zone, including those for Central Square at the front of the station. Although there are clearly issues which need to be addressed at the station, the redevelopment scheme suggested in the route study is designed as a stimulus to wider local economic growth, rather than to facilitate forecast rail passenger growth. So we would expect other beneficiaries to contribute towards achieving those goals. In addition, stations are designed to meet a specific rail need, not those arising from particular special events. I would urge all of those who are involved in event planning in the city and organising it that they consider the specific arrangements they need to make to handle their customers as they travel to and from the venue. It is imperative that the City of Cardiff Council, Welsh Government, local authorities, local developers all work in Network Rail and through the framework set out in the Capital Region City deal, identify further sources of funding for the wider plans to redevelop the station and the adjacent area, in a similar fashion to the joint contribution made by Birmingham City Council and the West Midlands authorities towards the redevelopment of Birmingham New Street Station, which I told those of us who attended our own party conference last month saw was a great success and a very attractive and pleasant station to be in. The Capital Region City deal, signed in March this year, will provide £1.2 billion in infrastructure investment, of which the UK government contributed £500 million, and sets out delivery of the South Wales Metro, including the Valley Line's electrification programme, as a key priority. Specifically, it has provided local partners with the powers and the resources needed to unlock significant economic growth across the Cardiff capital region. Transport for Wales has also been established by the Welsh Government to help deliver the new franchise and the next phase of the Metro project. We welcome the shortlist of companies that have successfully pre-qualified to bid in the competition. I think it is positive news both for Welsh passengers and those in the English Borders region. We will continue to work constructively with the Welsh Government and with the Transport for Wales to make sure that that franchise delivers for passengers. We're pleased to have reached agreement in principle on arrangements to ensure suitable cross-border links are maintained and developed in cooperation between the Secretary of State for Transport and Welsh ministers. In addition, we're obviously seeing growth on the first phase of the Metro, which is seeing improvement including Ebervale Town Station, which has seen already some 800,000 journeys annually, and my honourable friend mentioned the developments at Newport, including the new station at Pye Corner. I think that demonstrates that there is appetite for where there is demand for new stations. We do have schemes in place that can enable them. And phase 2 is going to follow. So DfT will continue to support the Welsh Government in their procurement for the franchise, as well as the infrastructure proposals that Transport for Wales are still evolving. But we know that some of their plans for a mix of light and heavy rail on the Metro lines will have an impact on both Cardiff Central and Queen Street stations, will have to be taken into account. So in conclusion, Mr Bone, I hope my honourable friend can be reassured that the government remains committed to improving rail services, not just in Wales in general, but in Cardiff in particular. And we still look to the Welsh Government and Cardiff City Council to continue to play their cooperative role that they have done so far on developing these plans. I'm sure that you will join me in looking forward to the first of these changes over Christmas and New Year when Platform 8 is opened. I'm sure he will have more opportunity to make use of it sooner than I perhaps will. I thank him for his time today.
The question is that this House has considered enhancing Cardiff Central Station. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.